The High Level Podcast. Thank you again for joining us this week. I am your host, Jonathan. You've come to the podcast where we discuss engineering, science, really interesting things, and we are very educated young men. And I myself am joined by the most educated of young men, Mr. Damon Hunselaar. How are you, Kante?
I am doing exquisite.
Exquisite. That's a very nice word.
Yeah.
Word of the week.
Word of the week. That's what they say.
Word of the week. I've actually told Jen to start working on some branded hats for us for the podcast so that we can record with branded hats. How cool will that be?
I could get behind that.
You could get behind that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you again. Yeah?
And not just because I get a new hat.
And not just... But you're a hat guy, dude. You're like bullish on hats.
Yeah.
You love hats. Hats are your thing.
It's part of my personality now.
Part of your personality, man.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you again for joining us. So for those of you who weren't here for the last episode, do you want to give us a brief summary there, Mr. Hunselaar, of what we discussed in part 1 of the Big Bad Nuclear Show?
So in part 1, we explored a lot about what is uranium enrichment. So we looked at how do we get the fuel for nuclear energy? How easy is it to process from when we get it from the ground to the point where we can actually use it in the plant? We spoke about different companies that do the enrichment, where the deposits are, and yeah, I would say in a quick 1-2, that's kind of it.
Okay, nice, man. So I think this week, this episode, we are going to be discussing a few myths. Like we said, I think we teased this in the last episode. A few myths about nuclear that people might have heard in part. Actually, funny enough, because, I'm always thinking about high level. Today, while we were at the little meeting thing, I was posing the question, not like outright, like, what do you think of nuclear? But just like, I heard they want to build another nuclear plant. How do you feel about that? And people, believe it or not, they don't like nuclear. And then this is the classic, right? I'll go, so I think nuclear is awesome. What do you think? Then they just go, Chernobyl. And I go, what
Chernobyl.
What about, like, what is that supposed, how am I supposed to respond to that? So I thought we were trying to have a conversation here, and you just say Chernobyl. And then I say, how many people died in Chernobyl? Thousands, countless lives lost. Okay, but we'll get into that. So yeah, the perceptions around nuclear, not amazing. I'll give you that much. All right, like I said, yes.
That's why we're here.
That's why we are around, right? So we're going to get into some myths. We're going to go into a little bit around safety around nuclear reactors. Then what else we got in here? Then we got the Chernobyls, we got the disasters of the world, which we can talk a little bit about. Then we got a little bit on thorium reactors, if anyone's heard a little bit about thorium. And then what else we got, Mr. Hunselaar? Then we'll look specifically at nuclear in South Africa. So it's going to be an action-packed one, man. I think you're ready to get into this.
Yeah, let's jump head first.
Head first, right in. All right, so like I said, we're going to start with myths. And myth number 1, Mr. Hunselaar. The nuclear industry has no solution to the waste problem. What's your feelings around this?
I feel like the nuclear waste problem is not so much a math problem.
Okay.
And it's more
a problem of the heart.
Yeah, it's more a problem of the heart. Yeah. No, I
Fair
mean,
enough. No.
I think most people know that they have to store it for long periods of time.
Yeah, no, that's a common thing. People know that, and it's fair.
People know that part. And then, yeah, so is there a solution? What's the truth of the matter?
I think so. I think, as we've obviously talked a lot about this, I think the constant theme around this is people understand small parts of nuclear, very like a small segment that made a headline, like nuclear waste lasts hundreds of thousands of years. And then that becomes their whole like perception of nuclear, which it's just not the case, right? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I also think part of it is people don't understand. So when you hear nuclear waste, and also like the media and the
Yeah, yeah.
past
And
and
The
all of those
Simpsons.
things, and
Yeah,
Oppenheimer have
yeah, yeah.
people's perception of what they think nuclear waste is just is a bit skewed. So, I mean, yeah, I
Yeah, I
think,
mean, let's first. So nuclear waste isn't that green gooey stuff that they show in The Simpsons and stuff that morphs into an animal and tries to consume humanity.
and
Right? It's literally just little metal chips. Sorry, yeah.
if you dip your arm into it, you'll come out with an extra finger.
It could work. It could work that way. You could become a superhero. I'll be honest, I'm not taking that off the table. All right. Not taking that off the table. But so I think the lie about nuclear waste is that there comes nuclear waste. I think we're all okay with that fact, but that the nuclear industry has no way of dealing with this or has never looked into it is simply not true. Like it's, I think you put this fact in here somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it is, but it's like the only energy source, energy production source that has at the initial, when you start the project, you have to budget for how you're going to store whatever you create as waste, right? You put that in there. Am I saying that right?
I'm not sure if I put that in there.
You don't remember that in there. But
Yeah.
anyway, so they literally at the beginning, when you do a feasibility, you want to make a nuclear plant, you are required by law to put aside money, a percent of your budget to handle the waste. Where does a coal power station do that? What about when the solar panels wear out and you need to recycle them? No one cares about that. So this is the only industry where we care about that at the beginning of the project, which just shows you how important it is. And it is important because it is very harmful waste. I
Mm.
don't think we want to say that it's
Yeah.
not harmful, right?
Yeah.
We're
I
on the
think,
same page there.
yeah, let's not put out the message that nuclear waste, if not
It's not
managed
safe.
properly, if not managed
Yeah,
properly, can be harmful and can cause problems. But I think the point we're trying to make is that this isn't something that's a mystery. People have thought about this, people have come up with solutions, and these are viable solutions.
100%. And they are solutions that have been around for a long time. This isn't a new thing we're dealing with. We've known since nuclear was around that it creates this waste. So yeah, I thought it was very interesting. I did tag you in this video and everything. I don't know if you had a chance at
I
watching it.
know, I saw that
Uh,
video quite a while ago.
Is it? It's a
Yeah,
good video. I
I
like
know.
this chick. What's her name? Cleo something. I don't know what her name is, but anyway, basically, she did like a video basically on. I'm saying basically quite a lot, yeah, just a little bit. We had a thing today where Shay, my sales manager, he says a specific phrase. I won't say what the phrase is, but he says a specific phrase quite a lot. And the whole challenge was for him to not say the phrase today. And you know, when you have like filler words, like I say right a lot, basically 100%, which I'm trying to count this episode if I could not say 100% so much. But like they're like filler words, you know, when you don't know what to say, you sort of say that word. What are your words? Do you have words?
I'm sure I do. I think
I'm
one of
sure you
mine
do.
is, does that make sense?
Does that
Does that
make
make
sense?
sense?
Does that make sense? So anyway, in this video, she basically, oh, my word, she walks through the ways that we can recycle waste. And I thought it was interesting because she goes to Argonne National Laboratory, which is a place in the US where they specifically look at recycling this type of nuclear waste. And she's just talking to some people there, and they say this statement. Now, I don't think the statement is 100% true, but it's an interesting thing to think about, that the nuclear waste only in the US, obviously they have the most nuclear stations, but the waste in the US has enough energy content in it that if we can utilize, we could power the US for another 150 years, just on the waste material of the actual spent nuclear fuel. I think that's amazing. And if we put some resources to it, we could maybe get something useful out of that.
And if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, I think it was in the same video. She was saying
Mm.
that the reason why the US doesn't have such a big nuclear recycling program is because one of the presidents at some point, because of the bad perception about nuclear, he said,
Yeah.
no, we're not gonna recycle nuclear, it's too dangerous, or
Yeah.
whatever. And so now all of their plants are not designed to use recycled nuclear waste.
Yeah, well, they obviously put it a bit on the back burner because you can't just put recycled nuclear fuel into a normal nuclear reactor. It must be a reactor designed for the spent fuel. So there's a few nuances with that. Obviously, I don't know the nuances, but I know there are nuances. You can't just put it directly back into the reactor it came from. So yeah, again, nuclear is so weird and political, and there's like little things that have happened in history that's put like the whole industry back like 30 years. It's really, really weird. But anyway, to recycling. I thought this was interesting. This actually came out of this video. There's like an advert, or I don't know what, it was like an educational video, like one of those old ones. And he says, this was around recycling now. He says, would you say that using the U-235 and not the rest of it is like using the cream and throwing away the milk? So basically the idea is you use the U-235 that you've enriched, and that's great and it's good. And then the waste that comes out still has energy content, but we make plans to throw it away. And yeah, we don't have to go too much into this. Basically, the whole idea is to create a closed fuel cycle where now you don't just use the nuclear fuel once, you can recycle it, make it a useful fuel again into a new pellet, put it into a reactor that's designed for it, and maybe use that a few times. And I think we can just jump like straight into the benefits of this. Obviously, it's nice to recycle the fuel. It's safe. They know how to do it. It is costly at the moment, but I think if we can drive a bit towards it, I think we can get something good out of it. The other thing is, so Japan does this a lot. Apparently, they have a whole closed fuel cycle. Because they don't mine uranium in Japan, this obviously makes their uranium stores that they currently have last longer. And when you recycle uranium, you reduce the actinides and the highly radioactive materials that come off as a byproduct. You reduce their lifetime quite a lot. There was one even like it was like 10 times order of magnitude lower radioactivity at the end when you could no longer recycle it. So yeah, I think it's a good one. Do you have anything else to add on the fact that we say the myth is that the nuclear industry doesn't know how to handle its waste?
Busted.
Busted. Myth.
Busted.
Busted.
Look, I think
right?
so as you say, it is expensive, but I think that's true with all new technologies or all growing technologies. Like you say, because of public perception, not a lot of investment has gone into making it a cheaper process. I mean, look at solar panels. They were expensive, I don't know how long ago, but now they're considered relatively cheap. So
because so much demand was driven there.
exactly.
And I think, again, just to cap this section off, it's not the only way that you can manage nuclear waste by recycling it. I would say it's probably the best way for humanity, but there are tried and tested methods like digging a really, really deep hole, which they do. I think it's in Sweden, one of the France
Finland and Sweden.
And Finland, yes, right. Finland and Sweden, it's right there in front of me. I didn't even read it. You dig a really, really deep hole and you bury the nuclear waste deep, deep below ground. And I mean, they've tested that. They're happy with that. I don't know. Do you think that could cause bad things in the future? To me, it just seems icky. Like, we don't want to look at it anymore. Bury it really deep underground.
I mean, you don't know what's buried there. You don't know what else is there.
Okay. That's true. So
Yeah, look,
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Obviously,
but
I'm just being pedantic there. Look,
they've tested it. They're happy with it. I don't know.
I think the question too, they don't have a solution to it. Clearly,
they do have a solution, and we can talk about how good that solution is, basically.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, Mr. Unsalar. Myth number 2. I don't actually know. I've never heard anyone that's actually said this, but apparently it's a myth. Transporting radioactive waste is too risky. Have you heard anyone say this? Is this a thing?
I mean, I got this myth from the World Nuclear Association.
No, 100%. I mean, no.
And like again, it's. I think people think nuclear waste is this green goo, and like say now you have it in like this tanker bursts open, and now you've got radioactive waste all over your floors. I mean, try to clean that up.
No, it's going to be a bitch, 100%. And again, a very highly regulated industry. It's not like You can just transport nuclear waste whenever you want. And also, interestingly enough, most of the radioactive waste that we transport is not nuclear spent fuel. I don't know if you want to go into this a bit. Very interesting. I didn't know this.
It's more from medical
waste.
medical waste, yeah.
Radioactive. Okay, so again, public perception is that green goop, we're transporting it, dangerous. Firstly, I think let's talk about the actual thing that you transport nuclear waste in, right? And you'll see there, I put a picture up there at the top. Like,
it looks like
this is not like, yeah, this thing is not like a little thing, right? And there, you'll see the points underneath there. The container walls are made of steel, lead, and then they have the few other shielding materials in there that are 5 to 15 inches thick, the walls. Now that is massive, man. 12 inches is a ruler. So like that's a ruler thickness on the wall. And that's just for transport, right? The ends are encased in structures called impact limiters that absorb impact forces and protect the container from damage. So I actually watched a video where they test these containers, and they have to test every container that leaves as a transport container, because it's ridiculous requirements, man. They like drive a train into one. It's ridiculous. And these things could handle, like, I don't know, Fukushima, I'm sure. Probably not the best example to use of a disaster for these things. But yeah, so okay. Yeah, they could survive Chernobyl. So anyway, the containers themselves are very rugged, and I doubt that they would ever get damaged. But let's put this into a bit more perspective on how much nuclear waste is transported each year. So apparently, globally, there's about 15 million packages of radioactive material transported, and there has never been an incident of radioactive release during these transport events. We can call them events. So there's never been anything malicious, never anything like that. And then of all the stuff, all the radioactive stuff that's transported in a year, we only estimate about 5% of that stuff is actually nuclear waste. So not a lot of it is actually transported every year. This is just again, a myth, and the myth is busted. Like, we have very stringent controls for it, and not a lot is moving every year. Trust me, if this thing's in an accident, I think the accident is more hectic than whatever's going to leak out of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, that container's walls are, what, 15 inches thick? I mean, if that thing falls on
15 inches thick, man.
If that thing falls on your car, like, I mean, you're going to need a new car, and chances are that thing's going to be just fine.
100%. And the fuel's going to be absolutely perfect. All right, so I think we're going to say myth busted on that. Let's move on to myth 3. That plutonium is the most dangerous material in the world. Mr. Insular. Is this true or not?
So,
in the world,
while plutonium is in fact toxic, it is not the most dangerous compound known to man. If you have to compare it to things like ricin or cyanide, it's
more dangerous.
It's pretty chill, you know. It's actually pretty chill.
Is this for now if you want to go and eat plutonium? Because I could see that being a problem.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, okay. So the main hazard around plutonium is its potential to increase risk over time if inhaled as particles. So like if there's plutonium particles in there and you breathe that in, it increases your risk of cancer. This risk is managed with stringent safety measures, and as you say, I mean, we just spoke about transport and all that stuff. And like, so, and plutonium, it also has uses as a fuel as well, because plutonium is one of the byproducts when you manage to split 238.
Yeah, of the fissions, fissions. Yeah.
So yeah,
100%.
So most dangerous in the world, like, is it dangerous? Are there hazards to it? Sure. Some plausibility there.
Don't eat it. Don't go and eat it, right?
But
put a label on it.
But is it the most dangerous substance in the world? Nah.
Myth busted. Because also, it's a terrible statement. I mean, you can't just say most dangerous material in the world. How? Come on. Okay, myth busted. We're moving on. Terrible myth. All right, so Hunsela, on to myth number 4. Nuclear waste remains hazardous for tens of thousands of years and poses a huge threat to future generations. True, not true?
Okay, so first thing to consider is that while nuclear waste does remain radioactive for thousands of years, its radioactivity decreases significantly over time. Because remember, radioactivity is caused by atoms decaying. So over time, you would expect that radioactivity to decrease as the elements decay.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
So yeah, so what that means is that most nuclear waste is hazardous for only a few decades. And deep
Got it.
geological disposal provides a multi-barrier approach to isolate this waste. And this ensures safety for future generations. Comparatively, other industries waste like heavy metals are hazardous indefinitely.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's true. And I think also, again, back to our recycling point, there is the possibility of us decreasing that whole radioactive or the harmful radioactive life by recycling it. You basically halve it each time. But yeah, sorry, what did you want to say there?
And I think another thing to add on to, and it kind of just follows up, is you said previously it's one of the only industries where the waste, you have to have a plan for it from the get-go. So
Yeah.
I mean, for you to say that it poses a threat to future generations, that's something we've been considering for a long time. And
Yeah.
therefore we have solutions.
And I think also be consistent then. If you're going to say that for nuclear, what about coal? What about wind? Has anyone given them the same ultimatum? Like, for future generations, this is the crap you're causing, right?
Chernobyl.
So Chernobyl. Yeah, I could see you were waiting for to say something there. So anyway, myth busted. Okay, let's move on to our final myth now. Myth number 5, that the cost of managing nuclear waste makes nuclear power uneconomic. Not even worth it.
So again, you got to look at nuclear as a whole. And when you look
Agreed.
at the cost of managing nuclear waste, those costs are factored in to the overall cost of electricity generation. So you can't just look at the cost of nuclear waste and say, okay, this is how much it costs us to do nuclear waste. You got to remember that nuclear power is the only large-scale energy producing technology that takes full responsibility for all its waste and fully costs this into the product. So when you're paying your electricity bill for your nuclear power, some of that money is already going and set aside to manage the waste that's being produced.
Right? As much as like 10% of the full facility cost goes to the actual waste management.
And as we stipulated earlier, nuclear waste isn't just simply waste. It can be reused, as it can be looked at as a resource, but it can also be looked at simply as waste. And the nuclear operators are required to set aside funds for managing that waste. And that typically represents about 10% of the total cost of nuclear energy. So when you look at it, you got to when you look at it as a whole, these costs do not make nuclear power uneconomic, considering that you get a really high energy output relative to waste volume.
Myth busted. All right. It's not a bad thing. It's not uneconomic. Chernobyl, which actually, conveniently enough, segues into our next section, Mr. Hunselar. Obviously, safety is a concern. It's a concern for people maybe that don't know enough about it, but it is a concern. I think it's probably the biggest hurdle in the way of, or maybe the perception of safety. So, Mr. Hunselar, do you want to talk us through a bit of the safety on nuclear reactors? I don't exactly know where you want to go with this, but I'm here to learn.
So, as we said before, in the past, there have been but 3 nuclear power station meltdowns.
Only 3?
Only 3 in the whole of history. All right. And each one was considered very seriously. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what actually happened in these incidents. Because as you say, whenever you ask someone, what's your opinion about nuclear, and they say they don't like it, and you ask, okay, but why don't you like it? Chernobyl. So now, when someone
before you start that, actually, when he said Chernobyl, I actually said to, okay, tell me one coal coal-fired power station that has caught on fire or something. Just name one for me. And I'm pretty sure there has to be one, right? Do you agree with that? Couldn't name one. It's all political, man. I'm telling you now, man. All political.
Who was it?
I'm not going to name names.
I'll edit it out.
Not until you'll edit. I will tell you offline. Let's set up a meeting around this, and we'll talk about it then. All right, continue, Mr. Insula.
Chernobyl.
Chernobyl.
Yes. So when you hear about these nuclear incidents, I want to come to you with the facts of what actually happened in these incidents, what was done about it, and yeah. So let's just dive right in. So the first one is 3 Mile Island. Now that sounds like Eminem's 8 Mile prerequisite, but it's not. It was one of the nuclear incidents.
When he was still young. Yeah, the toddler years. Yeah.
So as the name suggests, 3 Mile Island was named after where it happened, on 3 Mile Island. And it's located in a place called Susquehanna. I think the place is called
Susquehanna River?
Yeah, Susquehanna River in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And so what happened? So on March 28th, 1979, at 4 a.m., an automatically operated valve in Unit 2 reactor mistakenly closed. And so this caused the main feed water supply to the reactor to stop flowing. And the reactor core actually shut down automatically because of safety precautions. But subsequent equipment failures, so the valve wasn't the root cause. Subsequent equipment failures and malfunctions, human errors, and bad decisions led to serious loss of water coolant from the reactor core. So to kind of recap what happened, a valve closed, and now people panicked, bad decisions were made, and they ended up losing all the coolant water. Now this led to partial core meltdown. And so the core was partially exposed, and the zirconium cladding of the fuel reacted with the surrounding superheated steam to form large accumulations of hydrogen gas. And now some of this hydrogen gas escaped the core into the containment vessel. Now, that sounds very serious.
It does. It sounds actually quite scary.
I'm sure the people there were becocking themselves. So, very little of this gas and radioactive material actually escaped into the atmosphere, and it did not constitute a threat to health of the surrounding population at all.
Sure.
There were no adverse health or consequences to the environment and the population. And in the next couple of days, they managed to restore the coolant water to the core, and everything was cooled down. All right. So though the health impact was minuscule, it affected the American nuclear power industry significantly. So again, public perception. Look, and I'm sure this is the first time a nuclear...
No one died.
No one died. No one died.
And they chose to shut down 7 reactors.
Yeah. Yeah, so they chose to... How do
these people make decisions? I don't understand.
Yeah, so that was the first thing. They were like, okay, these 7 reactors are like this one, so the same problem can occur. Let's shut them down. Okay. Look, maybe it's because they were like, okay, let's reevaluate the situation. Let's not just assume that people were being dumb. I think maybe they were like, okay, guys, this is serious. We lucked out, but
let's take it seriously.
Let's take it seriously. Let's look at it properly. And I don't think anyone can be faulted for that. Then the next thing they did was there was a moratorium of licensing of all new reactors that was temporarily imposed. And that means they basically didn't grant any licenses for new reactors to be constructed. That moratorium, I had to look up that word. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know what it means, and then I looked it up.
That's a pretty hectic word, man. Yeah.
And now, because of this, the whole process of approval of plants by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was slowed for years after that. So, so no new reactors were ordered by the US utility companies from 1978 through to the mid-1980s. So, obviously, companies that build nuclear power stations took a knock. And Then there was increased public fear regarding safety of reactors. And there was also an increase in public opposition to the construction of new plants.
Mm.
And I
No,
think
of
one thing
course.
to consider, the cleanup of Unit 2, that continued up until 1990. And the damage to the nuclear plant was so severe that the unit remained unusable and couldn't be fixed.
That's hectic, hey? 11 years to clean it up. That's flipping crazy.
But no one died.
No one died. Fair enough.
All right. So the next on my list of big bad nuclear
The big
accidents,
boys.
the
The big
one,
boy.
this is by far the one that I think,
Yeah.
I mean, Chernobyl.
The worst one. Yeah, no, everyone knows this one. Yeah.
I mean, I'm guilty of like at
Yeah.
work we build things and I'm like, this thing could survive.
Could survive Chernobyl.
So yeah, let's actually now from what I've read, it looks like Chernobyl happened because of poor planning.
Okay.
In human error.
We don't want to we don't want to poison the well, but maybe.
This is just
maybe.
this is just my interpretation of it.
No, fair enough.
And I reserve the right to form my own opinions. Okay,
No,
anyway,
fair enough.
so
but don't form our audience's opinions before you've told them the story.
okay, you got me there. Yeah, so if you're listening, don't listen to my opinion.
Forget what he just said. Listen to the story.
Listen to the facts. Okay, so the Chernobyl disaster occurred on April 25 and 26 in 1986 during a failed experiment at Nuclear Unit 4. So what happened was,
experiment.
yeah, they were conducting some what experiment? I couldn't tell you. So apparently workers disabled some safety systems and removed most of the control rods. And this led to a runaway chain reaction and some explosions. There was a fire.
That just seems like they were asking for it. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, who's to say?
Well, okay, obviously not asking for death, but I mean,
now who's forming the
I haven't read the story yet, so I don't know. But okay, yes, continue on. Sorry.
So that explosions. I mean, there was obviously a fireball because fireballs come with explosions.
Of course they do.
There's a fireball, and subsequent fire released large amounts of radioactive material into the atmosphere, causing a partial meltdown. So, and then on the 27th of April, this is a Russian.
Come on, say it. Say it. Pripyat. Pripyat. Yeah.
Which is a town near Chernobyl. There were 30,000 residents that were evacuated, and an international outcry followed the Soviet government's delayed admission of the accident. So they tried to cover it up.
Of course they did.
Yeah. So what they did about it, so the radioactive debris was buried and the reactor core was enclosed in concrete sarcophagus, though it was later still deemed unsafe.
You've got lots of very descriptive words in this story, man. Sarcophagus. It's a nice word. Anyway, yes, continue on. Sorry to derail.
So those initial explosions only killed about 2 people.
Okay.
So not thousands. And with subsequent radiation causing deaths and illnesses, I couldn't really find a number on that.
I see 28 fatalities there.
Yeah, but some people say it was. So some sources say 2 people were killed, but then others will say it was more like 50. So yeah. So the actual number of fatalities is, the numbers varied quite a bit, so I wasn't sure how accurate they were, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough.
But yeah, so 28. We're gonna go with 28 fatalities due to radiation within 3 months. And so the radioactive contamination spread across Europe, causing long-term environmental and health effects. So they took a 30-kilometer exclusion zone. So that's a 30-kilometer radius. So that's about 2,634 square kilometers. So they established that as an exclusion zone. They were like, okay, this place is a no-go zone. It's a bit too dangerous. Let's rather keep away. But then later they expanded it to 4,143 square kilometers. So that translates to about a radius of 37 kilometers.
Sure. Crazy.
So, because there were just some locations where there was a bit too much leak. So yeah, but then after a while, when the radioactive kind of died down, Chernobyl actually became a site for dark tourism, and
Can you believe it?
it actually became a tourist attraction.
Look at that.
And there are actually some scientists that live in the exclusion zone, and there were reports of people being born with some deformities, and apparently the frogs there are black because of the radioactivity caused them to have more melanin in their skin.
Sure. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah,
But
so
overall, not too many not like the fatalities people say, basically.
Yeah. So Chernobyl, when the Soviet Union fell apart in the 1990s, Ukraine kind of took over that land. So now with the 2022 Russian invasion, there are some concerns about what's crack-a-lacking over there.
Yeah, who's responsible? Who's going to maintain it?
So yeah, I think let's call a spade, and this was not a fun time. I know we've made a few jokes about it, but it was a serious incident. Like, people died, but it wasn't. Again, it's not to the scale that people have made. I mean, like, I think there was that movie, or that there was a series. I haven't watched it. Have you watched the Chernobyl series?
No.
Okay, but apparently some dude's face melts off. I don't think that the nuclear radioactivity caused that. I think it would have just called more like radioactive sickness and stuff.
Yeah.
If a dude's face melted, it's most likely because of the explosion. Like I said, I don't think it was a happy thing by any means, but again, it's one of those things where it becomes the staple, Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
no.
Yeah. Well,
The argument
it was so publicized. And I think the thing to remember as well, the reason it got so much media attention is because that was still during the Cold War. Like, the Americans wanted to make the Russians look like idiots. And I mean, I know it sounds terrible, but I think there was a fatality in Middleburg last week. A guy died on a coal shelf. It collapsed or whatever. There's a death from coal. The guy's just mining coal. I mean, I really I sound terrible right now. But anyway, 2 fatalities doesn't sound too hectic to me. Let's move on to Fukushima.
All right. So Fukushima is the latest the latest nuclear incident.
2011, yes, see, that's actually recent.
2011. Yeah. So Fukushima Daiichi. So that happened on the 11th of March 2011, when a massive earthquake triggered a tsunami that struck the planet, damaging the backup generators crucial for cooling reactors 1, 2, and 3. And these reactors were then shut down, but a loss of power caused the cooling systems to fail. So again, it was a cooling system fail.
Yeah.
And as this residual heat built up, the fuel rods in these reactors, they overheated, and then that caused a partial meltdown. And then the situation escalated with the release of radioactive material as melted fuel reached the bottom of the containment vessels in reactors 1 and 2, creating holes that partially exposed nuclear material. And to add insult to injury, pressurized hydrogen gas buildup led to explosions in reactor 1 and 3, followed by a third explosion in reactor 2. And the rising temperatures in the spent fuel rods stored in reactor 4 caused a fire, further releasing radiation.
Sure.
Now, what did they do about it? So I feel like the Japanese government response to this was actually quite good.
Okay.
So in response, they established a 20-kilometer evacuation zone, which was later then expanded to 30 kilometers. And they also enforced a no-fly zone over it around. And so, yeah, about 47,000 residents were evacuated. And the evacuation areas eventually expanded to cover nearly 600 square kilometers.
Okay.
So workers were there, and they attempted to cool down the reactors by pumping seawater and boric acid into them, using water cannons and helicopters, and to slow the release of the radiation. And however, the rising steam and smoke indicated increasing radiation risks, leading to intermittent suspension of those efforts. So yeah, So another point of concern was that iodine-131, which is another radioactive material, started going into the ocean, and then they started to put in efforts to seal the cracks and the leaks. And then on April 12th, the nuclear regulators, they elevated the severity of the disaster to a level 7, which is the highest on the international nuclear event scale. So this placed it on the same category as Chernobyl. They were like, this thing's Chernobyl.
This is Chernobyl. Yeah.
So it took them until December 2011 to contain it, and that's when the Prime Minister, I'm gonna butcher his name.
Say it. Come on, man. Come on.
Prime Minister Noda Yoshihiko declared
Nice.
that the situation was stable, and that the reactors entered a cold shutdown, but there were still radiation levels that persisted, especially around the plant area. And then in 2013, some of the evacuation orders in the lower radiation areas were lifted. But there were still some areas that remained off limits, with limited business and visitation activities permitted in other moderately affected areas. And then in August 2013, a smaller nuclear incident occurred when 300 tons of irradiated water leaked from storage tanks due to a valve failure. It's always the valves,
bloody valves. Yeah.
I feel like the valve industry, the nuclear valve industry, really needs to have a look at their shit.
They need to take a look in the mirror. You know what I mean?
So this prompted Japan's Nuclear Regulation Authority to classify the event as a level 3. And then, so despite efforts to decontaminate, a study done in 2016 showed that some of the marine life, particularly the sedentary species like rockfish, still exhibited elevated radioactivity levels in the exclusion zones. However, there were no deaths or serious injuries due to radioactivity. Nothing. All of that shit happened, and that was a lot. But
that was a lot.
No one died.
No one died.
And there were no serious injuries.
What about the rockfish? What about the rockfish?
Fuck the rockfish.
But yes, check how many people died in the tsunami, man. Flipping heck.
So like I was going to end off by saying, look, while no one died because of in the nuclear incident, about 19,500 people were killed in the tsunami, which is a shame.
It's a tragedy. Sure, but man.
So
all right, talk me through this graph here.
So this graph is basically cumulative reactor years of operation. And in all that time, so basically this would be as if one single nuclear reactor had been running for 18,500 years. And in all that nuclear reaction time, there were only 3 incidents. Granted that they were pretty serious, and granted that like extreme measures had to be taken. But what gets me is that the nuclear incident in Fukushima was what was used as the final argument in Germany to say, let's shut down our nuclear power stations.
Yeah.
And
that's a rough thing to make a decision on.
And look, well, a lot of effort went into that. I mean, I get it. Remember, no one died, so it shows you that the human race is capable of containing.
And we learn. I think we learn from our mistakes, but I think the payoff for having nuclear is it's very high. You can't just discard it. Man, it's nice to put it into perspective, because again, like, people have this perception, and I'm trying so hard to not to seem like a dick, but like, it's really not that bad when you actually look at the incidents. Like, it's bad. I'm not saying it's not terrible, and it's not something that we should take seriously, but it's not that bad. Like, if we manage it well, if we learn from our mistakes, if we put in processes, this is a very manageable source of energy. Agree?
I agree. I agree that, look, it has to be you have to look at it with a serious eye, and you can't
Of course.
play around. Like we're not trying to make the message that nuclear is a plaything. It's not. But
Yeah.
again, it's such a large source of energy. And when you're dealing with energy, you're gonna be dealing with explosive things. You're gonna be dealing with, I mean, look at hydrogen. It's highly explosive. When you're dealing with things that your primary goal is to get energy out of this thing, we're gonna be using things that have a lot of energy. But I think one extremely important, and I don't care if this is the only takeaway that
Yeah.
someone takes out of this whole episode, remember this one thing: a nuclear power station cannot explode in the same way that a nuclear bomb can. And we dedicated an entire episode, part one of this thing, to explain why. And that is simply because in the fuel there is not enough U-235 to cause the reaction.
The
Simple as that.
uncontrolled fission. Okay, I
Exactly.
think again, let's take a moment here. A nuclear station cannot explode in the same way that a nuclear bomb can. I hope everyone can take that home. Take that to your parents, take that to your children, please.
Take it to
Please.
Chernobyl.
Take it to Chernobyl. I think this walks nicely into this next graph you've got here, because I think everything again, like when we look at nuclear, it's all about context and perspective, right? And it's fine to say nuclear is dangerous and people die, but in what reference frame? In what reference frame, right? Right. So again, it's about context. And it's fine to say that nuclear is bad, but if you don't have data to back it up, it's not that good, because then you're spreading misinformation. So actually, when you look at this graph, and we'll throw it up on the screen for you guys, you'll see their nuclear is between wind and solar at the bottom of the graph for people who have died per unit of electricity produced, right? So not a lot of people dying from nuclear because we manage it so much. It's at the point of being like overmanaged, but it's because we take it seriously. Agree?
Agree.
Right? And then I think again, so it's hard. It's like this conversation I wanted to have earlier today when people just say Chernobyl. Let's put it into context. And you can see you go up the graph. This is basically a graph of the different types of things. And you get to the top of the graph, it's fossil fuels, because a lot of people die during fossil fuel production or fossil fuel utilization when we're making electricity. So I'm not going to give you numbers. You guys can see the thing on the screen. But a lot of people die from the use of coal as an energy source. And nuclear, I think this is the takeaway from this graph. Nuclear sits between wind and solar for the amount of people that die per energy produced. Take that to the bank. All right.
All right. Yeah. So, all in all, we've spoken a lot about nuclear waste, and we've spoken about the accidents that happened in the past, and how much deaths does nuclear actually cause. So yeah, I think we've beaten this topic quite hard. So yeah, let's kind of change subjects here. So we've been talking a lot about uranium as a fuel source,
Yeah.
but are there any other fuel sources in nuclear that look promising?
Well, it's surprising that you ask that, almost like I'm going to talk about a different fuel here.
Uh,
All
I
right, so
don't
I think yeah,
I don't know
you
what
don't
the
you don't
first
know
I've heard.
what we do. First you heard of this. All right, guys, so I think gonna touch briefly on thorium for in case you've heard about it, not heard about it. Actually, when we were researching this episode, it wasn't long after that where I saw a headline that China has officially started construction on the first thorium molten salt commercial scale reactor to be finished. I think they want to start producing electricity in 2029. So I was going to get into this at the end of thorium, but one of the problems with thorium is it sounds good. It sounds lacquer on the face of it, but there's never actually been a commercial scale thorium reactor. And there was a whole bunch of reasons why or why not, but China's starting it. They are leading the way. All right. So going to give general overview. I'm not a thorium expert, so this is the best I've got. Thorium, ultimately, when you use thorium as a fuel, you still get to uranium 233. I think you get to 233 as the fissile material. You start with thorium 232, right, which is not fissile. You shoot some neutrons at it to get it. It actually absorbs a neutron. It becomes thorium 233, which is fissile. That decays into productium 233. Then that decays into uranium 233, which is very fissile. And then you can sustain the nuclear reaction. So my understanding of thorium now is obviously I'm saying obviously it's more abundant than uranium. And this also depends. I know you've said this to me before as well in the past. It depends if we're going to go mining uranium in the seas, then thorium's not the best option. But let's just say for now, the thorium deposits on the Earth are 3 times more abundant than uranium at the moment. How I understand thorium is, it's nice to use thorium because you still need a uranium or a plutonium sort of fissionable material to start the whole reaction, because thorium by itself is not super fissile. So that's how I understand it. I would think it's nice to be used where plutonium's created as the byproduct, which is the normal uranium fuel cycle. Then you can maybe use it in a second reactor with a thorium fuel. And again, this is just the fuel. This isn't even, we actually need to do a whole episode on the different type of reactors. Because I mean, we haven't even gone into like molten salt versus water versus stuff like that. So again, thorium, we don't have to go into too much of it. There's been a few reports done, especially by the Department of Energy in the US, where they basically said thorium's not ready for commercial scale. There's not enough R&D. There's not enough processes. There's not enough safety around it. But I'm sure we might see a few more pop up here and there. Up to now, apart from the China thing, there's literally just been like lab scale stuff or like private where they've done pilot plants and stuff like that. So thorium, again, you still need uranium to start the reaction. You can maybe use plutonium to start the fissile reaction. But again, you still decay down to uranium-233, which is what you use as the fissile material. It's just a different fuel. That's thorium in a nutshell. We could maybe do a whole episode on alternative fuels. But in case you've heard about thorium, talked about thorium, that's thorium for you.
All right, so all of this conversation to the up to, we live in South
has
Africa.
Led to this.
And South Africa has a nuclear power station. And in it, we have 2 nuclear reactors. And they are entitled Kuiberg 1 and Kuiberg 2.
Very original names. I like it.
So the whole reason why South Africa even decided to build a nuclear power station in the first place was because most of our coal deposits are in Mpumalanga. And it was just deemed too expensive to ship the coal to the Western Cape. And
it was a bitch.
Yeah, just the whole thing was inefficient. So someone was like, let's build a nuclear power station. And now that nuclear power station provides 5% of the nation's power. So yeah.
Power to nuclear. I love it. I still remember when we were having a lot of load shedding, all the people in Cape Town would be so smug because they had consistent power. Well, you know what? Now we all have consistent power. What do they say about that, Mr. Hunselaar?
No, my cat tried to knock over my shit. Okay. Sorry, say that again?
All right, yes. No, don't worry. I was just bitching a bit. Okay. Continue on.
So if we look at just that
this graphie.
Yeah, if you look at that graphie, that's just kind of like, that's so small.
What does this tell me?
Reference unit power. So that's basically how much yearly output megawatts of energy were produced by Kuiberg. And you can see over the years it's remained pretty consistent. I mean,
it looks pretty consistent. Yeah.
So like if we look at the electricity sector as a whole in South Africa, we've in 2021 we had produced about 244 terawatt hours of power. Okay, so if we look at like what's the energy mix, top number one thing is coal. 86% of our energy comes from coal. then 5% comes from nuclear, 3% comes from wind, 3% in South Africa comes from hydro, and then another 3% comes from solar. So yeah, and then also we export some of it, so about 3.6 terawatt hours of our electricity gets exported. And then I don't know, I'm not going to sit on this import export things, it's not really there. And then and then our total consumption is about 193 terawatt hours.
Nice.
So if you look at per capita consumption, it's about 3,300 kilowatt hours. I don't know if that's just accumulatively or like per annum or what. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I would think that's per annum. That seems reasonable to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Cuberg 1 initially first got into the grid in 1984 in April, and and
that's 40 years ago. Sure.
Yeah, and they started construction in 1976. So it took them a good 8 years to build the thing.
Mm.
And then a year later, Cuberg 2 came online. So, yeah.
Nice.
So
Sorry,
now
I was just looking at the little mappy you had here. Sorry, it's very small for me. My eyes are not that good.
yeah, I can make it bigger for you.
No, it's fine. I'm doing the zooming. Oh my goodness, now it's gone.
It's on the next page.
Okay, got you.
So now I'm gonna paint you a picture. I'm gonna tell you a story of
Paint me a word picture.
what is South Africa doing with nuclear power. So we
Yes.
built Cuberg, and alles was lekker. We were getting our 5% of the nation's electricity from it. And then in 2006, South Africans, they considered building a new nuclear plant to increase the capacity, focusing on boosting the Cape Province's supply. And then in 2007, Eskom approved plans to double generating capacity to 80 gigawatts. Does that
Gigawatts?
Yeah, gigawatts of energy.
80.
Yeah.
80.
Giga.
Fuck me, man.
Yeah.
Where's that?
The second bullet point.
Oh, there, sure, but
does that
Eskom approved
mean
a plan to double generating capacity to 80 gigawatts. Oh.
By 2025? That was in 2007. And that would mean that nuclear powers would be providing about 25% of the nation's power. Imagine had we actually stuck with that plan.
That would be amazing.
And we would have brought the coal down to 70%. So
and we would have had no flipping load shedding or anything.
Yeah. So the proposals included 4 gigawatts of pressurized water reactor capacity by 2016, with Areva and Westinghouse shortlisted for bids. However, Eskom delayed bids in 2008 due to financial constraints during the world recession, but they revived the 9,600 megawatts of nuclear capacity target in 2010 in the integrated resource plan. And that drew interest from companies like Areva and Rosatom and Westinghouse, and they continue to form partnerships with South Africa and international firms for potential reactor constructions and skills training and all of that good stuff. So things were looking good.
Yeah.
They shot really high, and then they were like, okay, maybe we overstepped, and then they were like, okay, let's revisit it. Then.
Yeah.
So there were several intergovernmental agreements that were signed with Russia and with France and with China. With Rosatom suggesting building a 9.6 gigawatt capacity plant, and that would have been a VVER reactor, and that's a kind of a water, what's it? I forget the word.
Pressurized water reactor.
Yeah, pressurized water reactor.
Cool.
And then they did environmental assessments, and they identified Tasepunt and Denaipatane as potential sites for nuclear power plants. So that's where they were going to build these things. But then in 2015, the South African government reaffirmed its commitment to nuclear expansion program, and they were still targeting this 9.6 gigawatts by 2023. But
Oh my
due
gosh.
to delays and legal challenges and economic issues, they clearly didn't
Yeah,
manage that,
nothing's happened.
because we're in 2024 and we still don't have these 9.6 gigawatt power stations. But in 2018, the government abandoned, because that's in 2018, the government abandoned their plans for the 9.6 megawatt
Why?
nuclear capacity. Yeah,
They want to go more
yeah,
like small modular.
they're revising their plans to go, okay, what about smaller modular reactors? And they also want to rather extend the
Cuba.
life of Cuberg.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Fair
they
enough. Can you imagine 80 gigawatts of nuclear capacity? Oh my gosh, that would have been amazing.
yeah, so and then yeah, to top it off, in 2020, there was like a whole roadmap of that was released, and they said that there are now plans for 2.5 megawatts of nuclear capacity to be developed. Again, with Tastepunt and Denafontaine likely to host these new reactors. And yeah, bidding for this project is expected in 2024. So
Oh, when do we need to submit our bid by?
yeah, probably soon, eh?
Probably,
Probably soon.
probably fake it till you make it, is what I say.
Yeah, we should probably just do a study to tell them
You know what I'm saying?
what the
You know, just to
capacity should be.
define, just to define the problem better for them. That's what I say. Nice. It's very nice to make inside jokes on a podcast when no one knows what we're talking about. All right. So, final thoughts, Mr. Hunselaar. We've done now. This is the second episode of Nuclear. Final thoughts. Final things you want to leave with the audience.
I think my final words would be, when it comes to nuclear, like, don't, yes, there's a, yes, it can be dangerous. Like, I don't think at any point we want to make the suggestion that nuclear doesn't, if not managed properly, can be dangerous. But that's like with most things. If you don't manage your bright area properly, you're going to burn your house down, most likely. And there's also a lot of regulations in place. People understand how bad nuclear can be,
Yeah.
and as a response, people are very serious about how they handle it. So yeah, don't give into the sensationalism of how bad people think it is. Rather dig into the topic, and you actually see there's a lot of potential for it. Except for Germany. They
No, they've already made their bed. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
So yeah.
It's done.
Do
I
you have
think
any
for
final?
for
Yeah.
me, I would say have your thoughts about nuclear. No problems. Obviously everyone must think for themselves. I think what I would like is our listeners, the highest of the level of listeners, start opening the conversation. Because I feel like the more we talk about it, the less power we give these bad perceptions of nuclear. And we can actually get people on the same page. I didn't start taking nuclear, I wouldn't say seriously, but start thinking about it until we had that talk that I spoke about in the first episode at Varsity, when professionals came and said, listen, like, we actually have solutions. All these things you've heard about and that your parents have told you and your teachers have told you all throughout high school about nuclear is bad. Like, we've actually thought about all of it, and we've actually got technology that will take care of it. So I think, again, it's having the conversation, being open about it, and yeah, not spreading misinformation like we did with the myth busting. That's all I would say. That's my final words on that. All right. So, Mr. Hunselaar, let's head into permission to bitch. Please. You sound like you have a banger of a story for me.
So I told you yesterday that I
Yes.
was gonna have practice.
Yeah, yes, your band practice.
Yeah, so
For
for
what's the
those
thing
that
called
don't,
again?
Earth Dance. So for those that
For
don't
Earth.
know, I am a musician. It is It is what keeps me. It's my
It
creative.
is your calling.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I have my own band, but we also play with a very talented singer named Tracy Matthews as her band. We're not in her band. We're basically supporting her.
Yeah.
So we last year we played Earth Dance, and we're gonna play Earth Dance again on the 21st of September with her. And so we were talking about, okay, let's organize a rehearsal and all of that stuff. And we can't rehearse in my band's normal practice space because we don't use a PA system. We all have in-ears, and so we don't need a PA system. And
Oh, you're too fancy. Is that the problem?
it's actually because we're too poor. So
Yes.
so I said, okay, fine, let's book a practice space, and then we can just go practice, have it like a time, all good, all is good in the world.
Wait. Before you continue this, yesterday you told me this story and everything was sharp.
Everything was
Is
shut.
this is this the bitching that's about to happen now?
This is the bitching now.
Oh my word.
All right, so okay, we planned for 6:30 that we're gonna meet
Yes.
there, right? The agreement I had with the guy organizing it was, all right, cool. He says, no, we all good. If anything changes, if anything comes up, he'll let us know. All
Yeah.
right, so uh, I hear nothing from the guy, so I'm assuming everything is shot. Okay,
Of
and then
course.
all the other members, and they're like, okay, you guys, are we still good for the studio? And I'm like, yeah. We all good. He hasn't let me know otherwise. But something in me just said, just check. Just
Oh,
send the guy a message. So I send him a message. I'm like, okay, listen, are we still good for 6:30? And he's like, oh no, shit. He was supposed to tell me that he had some last minute family dinner plans. Uh, so we're gonna have to move it to Wednesday. Now, the thing that I've identified that irritates me the most,
okay, yeah.
and I've overanalyzed this into two things, right? First of
Okay.
all, like, okay, I get that he's had a family dinner, and other people live where we're practicing, so they do get a say in whether or not we get to practice. I accept that. Okay,
Fair enough.
true. But the guy said, sorted, booked, not a problem. Okay.
Yeah.
And he was quite quick with the action. So that tells me that he didn't check with his people to say, look, he wants to have people over to practice. Is that cool? Yes, no, whatever. Fine, cool. So then the second thing is that gets me is I'm okay with people canceling, but if you're gonna cancel, you must come
You
to no,
cancel. You
you
must
must come to
cancel.
me. Had I not messaged the dude to say, are we still on? We all would have just rocked up. And then the
At
guy
his
would have,
house
and
for
it,
his family dinner.
exactly.
That is so bad. That is so unprofessional, man.
Yeah,
I apologize profusely. Are you okay?
I'm
How's
okay.
Damon?
Yeah, I'm okay. I got
Oh,
over
flip.
it.
Sorry, man. So is that now for tomorrow then?
Yeah, for tomorrow.
Okay. Confirmed.
Yeah, confirmed.
Booked.
I'm not gonna check
Okay.
with the guy. We're just rocking up.
We're just rocking. Come hell or high water, you are practicing tomorrow. All right. Are you ready for mine?
Is it a goodie?
Oh, it's not even a goodie. You know what it is? Okay, I'm going to open my heart to the audience. I know that I'm the idiot in this, that I had expectations, and that is my fault. So I'm just going to go up front and say that, okay? I am the cunt in this. Putting it out there. So, and this really isn't that big. I think there's been a bit of personal growth from my side. So I don't know. I'm going to call this part of my life hacks, is that I am learning to live with myself as being the asshole. So we have, and I'm not going to get into too much of the details. At the back of our complex behind us, there's a sewage line that's overflowing. It's municipal now. So we need to obviously report it to the municipality so that they can fix it and whatever. It's obviously smelly. So it's making the whole complex smelly because it's smelly. So and you know me, I must manage the properties for my mom. So I'm used to dealing with the municipality. But in this case, I'm actually such an idiot. I said, you know what? We pay a body corporate to manage the body corporate. Like they are supposed to deal with these things. I can do it because you make a phone call, you report it, you get a reference number, it's done. But out of principle, I'm going to make the people that I pay an exorbitant amount of money every month to, I'm going to make them make a phone call, get a reference number, and follow up on it. Right? Seems reasonable. Reported it on I think it was the Monday last week. Nothing. The whole week. And I'm like, okay, I'll give them a day or two. Shouldn't have to give them a day or two, but I'll give them a day or two. Follow up. Oh, no, I did report it. So now you've got to go through this whole chain of command. I did report it to the body corporate. I don't think she's had time to phone it. I was getting really fucked off. I won't lie. I was
Meanwhile,
getting
you
proper
have to
fucked off.
breathe in human excrement.
Right? So I was getting really, really upset. So anyway, we took a walk to the park one day. I could see, obviously, no one had reported it. And in that moment, I had a conversation with myself. I said, Jonathan, and this is where the growth comes in. Jonathan, you can go and lose your shit. You have every right to lose your shit at the body corporate because you pay them firstly to do this. It's not a fucking hard thing to do. Call the municipality, get a reference number, call back and follow up. All right. That's all they have to do. What else do they do the whole day? I don't understand. Anyway, we're getting beside the point. Had this conversation with myself. I could go lose my shit, be in the right, everything go my way. Or I could just phone the municipality in that moment while I'm standing there in the park with the dog, having a nice time. It took me all of 2 minutes to report it, got a reference number, everything. The lady was very nice to me, and it was done. And then I sent the reference number to the body corporate, and I said, listen, I'm sure you've been busy, but I've reported it. I will let you know what happens.
And now
And in that moment, I know it's my problem. But you know what? It's my problem at the end of the day. I'm the one breathing in the cuck. No one else cares. Even though I pay them, it would take longer and it would upset me more to follow up with them than for me to just take the responsibility and phone the municipality 4 times a day. How ridiculous is that? But anyway, personal growth. I myself decided to not be, you know,
You made the world a little less shit.
you know what I mean? I don't know if that was tied in there specifically, but yes, that is my personal growth. Do you have a life hack for us, Mr. Unsalar, this week?
Not this week.
Not this week, not your running program.
Oh yeah, okay, fine. I guess I
Okay.
can talk
Your
about
Excel spreadsheet.
So Jonathan has convinced me to do a marathon. I've never run a full marathon in my life. I've done I've done
And you
half a
can do
marathon.
it, man. You can do it.
And I had a dream where I was running this thing and I was actually having a lack of time. But then I woke up and I thought to myself, okay, if I'm going to do
Need to
this,
train.
I've already paid for it. I've already entered myself. I've already committed. So I might as well put together a training program. So I spent the morning and I worked out a nice little like a training program for myself. I set some rules and protocols. So like if I don't run on this day, then I have to make it up at another run and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Get the kilometers in.
Yeah.
And yeah, I must say, and then I've also made the training program my phone home screen so that I remember that I have committed to this.
Oh, Sherbet, so you've gone all the way, man.
I'm
You've gone deep.
I think
You're
it's
in
more.
there.
I think it's more fear because the last thing I want is to be like 15 kilometers in and being like, I can't do this for another 25 kilometers.
No, man, it's gonna come. It's good. It's all a mental game, man. But you can do this. I believe in you.
Yeah, but
You
I
got
said,
this.
come hell or high water, I will
We'll
hit
be
my
doing
running
this.
goals and plan some some lacquer runs in there. So yeah.
Nice, man. I can see the growth. I can see the growth, if that makes you feel any better. All right, I've got no life hacks. Mr. Unselot, kick us in with your recommendation.
Big Bang Theory. It's a classic, an oldie.
Really?
But a good. Yeah.
Are you watching it again?
Yeah, I like it because it's one, I actually understand some of the jokes now and some of the
Nice. Yeah,
references.
yeah.
Like there's a scene where because Howard sees that he's the engineer.
The engineer.
So obviously I identify with him the most. And there's
Yeah.
a scene where he's building some platform and then Sheldon's like, no, but it's
Oh, the shelf.
it's a shelf. And then he's like, no, but why aren't you making it out of carbon nanotubes? And he's using titanium. It's a stronger material. And I just thought to myself, probably is a stronger material, Sheldon, but you're thinking like a physicist. You're not thinking like an engineer. Because an engineer knows that carbon nanotubes are probably a hell of a lot more expensive than titanium, and titanium can still do the job. So,
and also, you'll need to get this past your boss.
Exactly.
100%. All right. Is that all on recommendations?
It's all on recommendations for me. And you?
Is it? Okay. I've got two. So now, okay, this tiny bit of backstory. I don't have any streaming services at the moment. Had My Family Cinema. We already been through this. It's a matter of principle. I'm not renewing it if I have to log into my bank account on a weird flippin' webpage. Not doing that. We've cancelled Netflix and we have anti-social September. So I really have nothing. I can only watch long form stuff. So I'm watching some stuff. I watch 1 or 2 YouTube videos a day, call it. So on that, this is where we get to my recommendation. I found this channel called, sorry, this is what I was looking for now while you were talking. It's called the Infographic Show. So they do like it's an animation-y thing. Have you seen them? I don't know. It's really good. Like they do a lot of historic stuff. So they'll do like Julius Caesar and like all in infographic-y type thing. But the guy's really cool. He tells good stories. He even does some like what if scenarios. So there was one that I watched. Very good. It was, what if the Roman Empire hadn't fallen? And it was actually very, very interesting. I've really been enjoying it. So yeah, what was that? The Infographic Show. Very good YouTube channel. Would recommend. Yes.
Yeah. Also, that reminds me, there's also another YouTube channel. The guy's called Zay Frank, and he does this thing. Zay Frank, and he does this thing called this infographic. He also does the CPS case numbers. It's check it out. It's quite interesting. It's like anomalies, and then he'll talk
Anomaly.
about
Dude. Okay, send me some links. I'll have a watch you.
Anyway, so Zay Frank, he's got a series called True Facts.
Yeah.
So he'll talk about different kinds of animals, and honestly, it's so informative, but it's also hilarious. Like the way he speaks and the way he presents it.
Is it banger?
No. Like just watch one of his. I watched one about crabs, and then he was like, "Yeah, I know some crabs have really big claws, and it's just so that they can wave and get the attention of the females."
I mean, fair enough. Fair enough.
It's quite funny. I won't do it justice if I try to do his.
Try to impersonate him. No, I think
there's one thing where he talks about sloths, and he's like, now. This is the 3-toed sloth. And now you got to remember that if you're named after how many toes you have, you probably haven't done all much in your life.
You haven't done too much in your life. That makes sense. All right, so now I'll definitely have a look up on him. Then my final recommendation for the day. I finished reading The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Dostoevsky. It's a Jordan Peterson recommendation. This is where I got it. It is apparently one of the greatest Russian novels of the 20th century. I don't know. I've read a lot about how to read it while I was reading it because I couldn't understand anything that was going on. it's very like sensationalized. It's basically the devil comes to Moscow, he puts on a magic show, then he takes the master and Margarita, which are just these two random Russians, on like a journey around the city, and I don't know. It's a lot, man. And then you go back to Jesus Christ and Julius Caesar, and then there's other. It was a lot for me. I'm not like a weird bookie. Like I can't understand all these conceptualized things. Like I feel like I'm very good at reading, but yes, it was a lot for me. I don't know if I'm just an idiot or if I'm just not reading it at the right point in my life. And I don't want to say I wasn't a fan, because people talk so highly of this book. It makes me feel stupid to say that I'm not a fan of it. Do you ever have that? Like where you should like a book, but it was just terrible. I don't know. Have you ever had this? Right?
I generally find that for me, when it comes to books, it's generally I'm either hooked in like the first 3 pages or
not at all.
Or not at all.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe I need to read it again with some study material. I don't know, because it's very literature-y, and I don't understand it. So anyway, Master and Margarita, I would love to recommendation, basically, but I hated it. Yeah. Anyways, anything else from your side there, Mr. Insula?
No, not from me. I think it's been a lucky episode.
No, it was a banger. This was a good segment. Well, two-parter. I think it was a good one. I still think there's more to come from nuclear from us.
I think
so.
Now let's table the topic.
For now we table it, but it's coming in the future. That's what I'll say.
You tell me I recorded
that. Thank goodness. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us to the end of this second parter on nuclear energy. It was a really fun one. If you guys want to reach out to us, correct us on anything, comment on anything, please, it's at High Level Podcasts on Instagram and YouTube. Please, guys, send us messages, follow us. Would appreciate if you want to send us an email directly. It's highlevelpodcasts@gmail.com. And if you have not subscribed in your podcast app, please hit that subscribe button. We would really appreciate it. It helps out the channel a lot, helps us keep us motivated, man. We love to see those numbers pumping in the upward direction. So thank you guys so much for listening all the way to the end. We will see you in the next episode.